and we rise. Bless us and keep us, that we see each other on the 74th day from now. We celebrate and sing how we got over. How we got over. We work by day, we celebrate by night, how we got over. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. Thanks again, my friends. I'm so grateful for your presence. Look forward to staying in touch. Okay, folks. What a way to be inspired. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. I'm going to turn to Jason for quick announcements. I want to say thank you to our budget and finance co-chairs, Dan Helper and Doris Krause-Mays. You heard the presentations, but Doris and Dan have been indispensable in leading that committee. I want to say thank you to both of them. Let me turn to Jason very briefly, and then Blake will close it out.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful meeting. I believe there are some soda and snacks outside the room for members. Safe travels home, and I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Blake,
who has one very important announcement.
First of all, can we give the staff that have been serving us and helping us and supporting us a round of applause? Come on, we can do better than that. Those inside the room, those that have been helping us in the hotel, we can show them love right now. And as a perfect sign to say thank you and for unity, on behalf of the DNC, if you want to join us for beers and cocktails upstairs, it's on us of American Craft right now. So let's come on upstairs, let's close on out, and let's go kick ass and win on November, all right? Let's go.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. Go forth and win. 73 days till the weekend.
Arizona Senator John McCain has died at the age of 81. He was first elected to Congress in 1982, serving 4 years in the House of Representatives before becoming a U.S. Senator, a position he held for the last 3 decades. He ran for president twice, the first time in 2000 and again in 2008, becoming the Republican nominee. Prior to his political career, Senator McCain spent more than 20 years with the U.S. Navy before retiring in 1981 as a captain. His service included bombing missions during the Vietnam War, where he faced injury and captivity when his plane was shot down over northern Vietnam in the fall of 1967. As a prisoner of war in his early 30s, John McCain was subjected to torture and solitary confinement while being held in various prison camps, including one commonly referred to as the Hanoi Hilton. He was released 5.5 years later. In 1992, Senator McCain spoke about his experiences as a prisoner of war and Vietnam's legacy in American history. From the C-SPAN archives, this is just under an hour.
October 1967, on the lake of Chuk Bach, the people and the civil militia arrested a American Major John McCain, who was shot down with the American planes A4B1. It was shot down near the electricity, near the power plant Yen Phu. During the day, 10 American planes were shot down during the same day. John McCain, when he came here, he erected this monument.
That is a picture from Hanoi, and the voices of Mr. Hung, who was a C-SPAN minder while we were there the whole 4 days in Hanoi. But that is a monument to John McCain, or on behalf of John McCain. But John McCain's here with us. You tell us, what is that? What are we looking at?
I've never understood that, Brian, and I visited it when I went to Hanoi sometime in the 70s. I think around the middle 70s that was built, and I'm not sure exactly why. But I have gone to visit it, and of course, there's a few mistakes there. Like USAF, I was in the Navy, and they called me a major, and I was lieutenant commander. But why they erected it and what significance it has to them, I have never really quite figured out. I complained a couple of times when I heard that the grass was overgrown and there might have been some bird droppings around it, and they thought I was serious, so I didn't complain anymore.
Were you shot down right around there?
In that lake. I went down right in that lake, and as he mentioned, the thermal power plant, the electricity plant we were bombing, and I was hit right over the target. In fact, I was in a dive, so when I ejected, I landed right in that lake, and that's obviously why they put it up there. And as you know, I was badly injured, and they swam out and pulled me in. And I can tell you the natives were less than friendly upon my arrival because, and understandably so, we had just finished bombing their city. You know, I mean, I don't hold any grudge against them because of that. But sometime in the 70s, they built that particular memorial, and frankly, I'm very glad to say I don't have any other memorials anywhere else.
How many times have you been back there?
Just twice. I went back once in 1985 with Walter Cronkite and the CBS film crew on the 10th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, and I was there for like 2 days. And then last March, Phil Graham and I, March a year ago, Phil Graham and I went back for a few days, and we visited it again, and we also went down to Saigon. You know, everybody calls it Saigon now, as you know from Vietnam.
Is it hard to go back?
No, no. You know, Brian, it was a long time ago. I have many Vietnamese friends who were on the other side, in other words, on our side. There's no reason for me to hold a grudge or anger. There's certainly some individual Vietnamese, some of the guards, that were very cruel and inflicted a lot of pain on me and others, but there's no sense in me hating Vietnamese when, as you know, and all of us know who have visited Vietnam, the Vietnamese people are very basically decent, gentle people, you know, and a victim throughout history, partially due to geography, of oppression and wars that have gone on for a couple of thousand years, or being occupied by another country such as the Chinese, and then the French, Japanese, French, then, of course. So I hold no ill will towards them. I don't admire the communist system. I don't like it. I think they are going to fall sooner or later, just as, you know, the rest of communism is falling throughout the world. But overall, I hold no personal grudges.
Let's go over some of the statistics. You were in the Navy for how many years?
Total of 22 years.
From when to when?
I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1958, and I left the Navy in early 1981.
When did the plane go down?
October 26, 1967. I was hit by a surface-to-air missile over the city of Hanoi. As I mentioned, we were bombing the thermal power plant. It was the first time we had bombed a target inside of Hanoi, and as many of our viewers will remember, they were very heavily defended, the city of Hanoi. They had rings of surface-to-air missiles. I counted 8 surface-to-air missiles in the air headed roughly in my direction, and one of them hit me.
How badly were you injured?
Broke both arms and my leg on ejection because I was in the dive when I was hit by the surface-to-air missile, and then when I was pulled out, my shoulder was badly damaged by a rifle butt, and I was bayoneted a couple of times. As I mentioned to you, they were quite, quite restless. Fortunately for me, the Army came up and picked me up, put me in a truck, and took me. It was a 5-minute ride to the prison. May I say that that's another example of waste of the taxpayers' dollars. I'd gone to 4 different escape and evasion schools, and here I was shot down in the center of Hanoi in a 5-minute ride to the prison. So it was all that training was for naught.
Again, how many years were you in the prisons?
5.5 years.
And how many years in how many different prisons?
I was in 3 different prisons. One was that we called the plantation that you have taken films of, and the other was the old French prison, which I think we're going to see later on, called Wallow, which means in English, rough translation, furnace of fire, I understand, which was built by the French in 1943, and that's a real prison. And then we were taken out to a punishment camp for about 9 months in 1970 because we we wanted to have church services, and the Vietnamese had taken about 24 of us. Then we were taken back, and again back to Wallow Prison, where I stayed until we were released. And remember that in 1969 and 70, or particularly in 1970, the treatment of the Vietnamese of the prisoners changed dramatically, and there's a lot of theories as to why, but we went from basically solitary confinement, or 2 or 3 to a cell, to large cells of 45 or 50 in each. It was a dramatic and, by the way, wonderful change in the treatment.
How many prisoners of war are there in the United States Congress? And
there is none in the Senate. There are 2 others in the House, Pete Peterson and Sam Johnson. Sam Johnson from Texas, Pete Peterson from Florida.
Did you know either one?
Very well, both. Yep. Sam Johnson much better than Pete Peterson, but I knew them. Knew them both, yes.
Is Sam Johnson, Pete Peterson's a Democrat.
Yes.
And Sam Johnson?
Republican, yes.
Is there anything about being in prison that makes you a Republican or a Democrat?
I think that there was some resentment back in 1968 when Lyndon Johnson stopped the bombing. We assumed that there would be some accommodation made for the POWs because, we were up there bombing and we were captured. Then he stopped the bombing, and there was resentment about that. And also, I think there was, in the 1971-72 period, there was much more encouragement and help to the families by the Nixon administration than there had been before. Now, we could go into the reasons for that, but there was clearly more help for the families at that time. So, but also, as you know, military people have a tendency to be more conservative.
We have a map here, and this map shows Indochina and Vietnam, of course, just so we can get a rough overview of where was the carrier that you were flying from? In here?
We were actually further north than that. We would be not too far from Haiphong. Can you see Haiphong there on the map?
Sure, it's right in there.
We would stay up fairly close. In fact, some of our raids, bombing missions we would go on would be 45-minute missions. We'd take off from the ship, 15 minutes to the shore, drop and return. So because there was really no real threat to the ships out in the Tonkin Gulf, we sometimes stayed fairly close to the North Vietnamese coast.
I want to show the audience, too, so for perspective, where this is. If you go right up here, you're talking about being in China, right there. And right in there, and you come down and you're into the North Vietnam or the Hanoi area, Haiphong being right there. And then on the other side, of course, is Laos.
Yes. And if you move over to Thailand,
right
you will see that the Air Force bases were up near the Vietnamese border.
Up here?
Yes, and places like Udorn and Ukuba, some others, and the Air Force would fly out of those bases into, and also some from South Vietnam, into Hanoi and Haiphong. And you can see that they were very long missions that the Air Force had to fly as compared with ours, where the ships would be right off the coast. And for a long time during the war, Vietnam was basically divided in a line north-south, basically through Hanoi, and the Air Force had the responsibility for those on the Thailand side, on the western side, and the Navy a lot on the eastern side. Although later in the war, we went on coordinated strikes with the Air Force.
17th parallel about right there?
Yes.
Which meant that this was north and this was south?
Yes.
We've got some videotape, Senator McCain, of a B-52 crash site that has kind of become a mini tourist area over in Hanoi. Not many Americans have been there. Have you been there, by the way? This is the neighborhood.
I have not been there. I've seen pictures of it before. Remember that the B-52s did not fly north until the Christmas bombing of 1972. And there were a number of B-52s, I think 10 or 12, that were shot down during that Christmas period. But it was an incredible display of firepower and basically had taken out the Vietnamese ability to defend themselves, at least as far as airstrikes are concerned.
We show this because we wanted to show you the neighborhood, and you see pictures of this from time to time. This is a day in April that was about 100 degrees, and this, in the middle of that swamp there, with houses around it, is wreckage from a B-52 that they, as a matter of fact, you got to pay a little money to get back down this
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's a free enterprise system at work, huh?
Yeah, take a little car back in this area, but they let us shoot this. It didn't cost much, I can tell you that. Any reaction when you see a chunk of American B-52?
Well, not particularly, except to hope that the crew obviously had gotten out. And also, I must say that you can make an argument that the B-52s were not used correctly during the Vietnam War. They bombed the jungles and the Ho Chi Minh Trail, whereas once they were sent north, they had a devastating effect, Brian. I mean, they just literally took out the air defenses of North Vietnam, where we had been using tactical air, not totally, very successfully in the past. B-52 is an awesome weapon of war, and I noted with some interest that some of them were used even in the Persian Gulf effort.
And what was the difference in the size of your plane, say, and the size of this plane?
I think, of course, it was like 1/50th the size, but perhaps more importantly than that, the bomb load of a A4 that I was flying was generally about 7 or 8 bombs, and of course, I don't know how many hundreds come off of a B-52. The firepower that a B-52 could bring to bear is very impressive. And the first few nights, it was very dangerous for the B-52s, until they took out the air defenses. A number of them were shot down, as you know.
This is in the middle of Hanoi. If you've just joined us, our guest is Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, who was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. We're going to show some videotape in a moment from the prison cell where actually 2 of the 3 places where he was located while he was there. And this is in a neighborhood that's fairly easy to get to. But I guess one of the things that people would want to know is if we actually bombed civilians during the war.
You know, we didn't, Brian, and it's coming out more and more that we did not. There was a famous incident of a so-called Bac Mai hospital, which was a hospital in Hanoi, which supposedly struck with all these casualties, and it turned out that was not the case. There was precision bombing, and the civilian casualties were minimal, and the Vietnamese will even admit that now. But at the same time, I've got to add that whenever you're in a war, civilians are going to be hurt. If civilians were not injured and there weren't civilian casualties, war would be a much more attractive kind of a business. And so the casualties were minimal, but unfortunately, innocent civilians were killed.
Do you have any idea how much this B-52 cost? I know, and they've been in service for how long?
You know, they've been in since the 50s, and they have turned out to be an incredible workhorse because they were originally designed to a large degree as a strategic bombers, you know, to carry just nuclear weapons, and they turned into a conventional carrier. I do not know the cost, but I would say to duplicate something like, you know, that which is the B-2, you're talking about $1 billion a copy. I think that the B-52 was a very worthwhile investment, and I have great admiration for the crews that flew the B-52s because, you know, they flew straight and level and depended on their electronic countermeasures, whereas at least in a tactical airplane you can dodge.
That's a plaque, by the way, on the wall there. You can see right down there at the lower left-hand corner where it says 52, which fairly obvious what it is. And that's a plaque on the wall right near the site where you can go and tourists can go in Hanoi. They seemed to ignore us when we were there. Didn't seem to pay much attention to us. We were not, at least in this area, an oddity, although we saw no other tourists that came to this area. Are you surprised that they would keep something like this? Would we do the same thing here?
I don't think we would, but I think at least for a period of time they wanted to have those visible symbols of their victory. Particularly, you know, this picture is kind of interesting. Look at how terrible those conditions are. And the problem in Vietnam today, as you know, is that they've made these enormous sacrifices, and yet nothing has come of it. And that's a bitter, bitter pill for the people of Vietnam to swallow.
Why do you think they've not been able to do better?
Their system. As you know, their system of socialism, of central government control of the economy, etc. And as we may get into later on, or at least at some other program, the economy of Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City, but everybody calls it Saigon, is much more thriving, as you know, because there is capitalism and free enterprise. And now even in North Vietnam, it's improving a little bit because they have loosened the controls. But their system is such, like any other socialist country, quote, communist country, they can't improve unless they allow the free enterprise system to function. And as you know, the people that still run North Vietnam are the old Ho Chi Minh 80-year-old generation, who even they recognize they've got to change.
You said that you were mistreated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that endemic to the South Vietnamese people? I mean, the Vietnamese people, not the South Vietnamese, North Vietnamese people, or what?
The Vietnamese viewed us, understandably, as an enemy. They viewed us as, they called us air pirates. We had bombed their cities, towns, etc. And they believed that, and I understand why they believe that. As you know, they're very naive people, and I understand why they would dislike us, and I would understand even why they would mistreat a captured pilot to get military information. The resentment that I hold towards the Vietnamese, at least those individuals, was when they attempted, as they did for years, to exploit us for propaganda reasons. It's not in keeping with the Geneva Conventions, and frankly, they were trying to use us as an extension of the battlefield because they knew very well that militarily they would never prevail, but they could prevail, as Ho Chi Minh said, in the streets of Washington, D.C., Detroit, Chicago, and San Francisco. So most of the mistreatment was to make tapes, to confess crimes, et cetera, et cetera.
You're Senator John S. McCain III?
Yes, yes.
This is a leading question because I know you knew your father because when I was in the Navy, he was the first admiral I ever met when I was in the basic class at Little Creek in Virginia going into the Navy. He was John S. McCain Jr. Who was he, and what role did he play in this war with you in it over in prison?
Both my father and grandfather were Navy admirals. In fact, it's my information they're the first father and son who were both four-star admirals in the Navy. My grandfather was an early naval aviator and was the commander of the carriers in the Pacific under Admiral Halsey in World War II. My father was a submarine officer during World War II and worked and was promoted and was the commander-in-chief in the Pacific during the Vietnam War, during the time that I was in prison, which was, as you can understand, a very difficult period for him. Much more difficult, in my view, on him than it was on me.
And what year did he die?
He died in 1980.
Did he see you elected to the United States Senate?
He did not.
Did he know you were going to run?
No, he did not.
And before, you said you spent, what, 21, 22 years in the Navy?
Yes.
You got out at what rank?
As a captain.
And
yes.
what was your last job in the Navy?
I was the Navy liaison officer to the Senate.
Have anything to do with getting you interested in being one of them?
Yes, exactly. It did. It made me very interested in political life, not because I found that particularly attractive, but it's certainly when I saw what a person can achieve as a member of Congress, it became very attractive to me.
Again, if you've just joined us, we're continuing our many-hour special, Vietnam Revisited. Our guest is Senator John S. McCain III. And he is here to talk about his experience, 5.5 years as a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War. And we now have some video that will take us, we just drove around what is called, I guess, are they all called Hanoi Hiltons?
You know, the media called them all Hanoi Hilton. We had different names for them. The Plantation was one. The Hilton we knew of was the old French prison, which I think we're going to see later on. And there was another large prison also. But we gave the only one we called the Hilton itself specifically was the old French prison. The one we're driving around now, we called the Plantation.
All right, this is a complete around the block of a prison, that the Plantation that's inside of all this. Does this look familiar to you?
The outside does not, because I never saw it from the outside. Whenever we were taken someplace, we were always blindfolded and handcuffed and taken at night, so I never saw the outside.
When you went back there in 1985 with Walter Cronkite, what was the purpose?
They asked me because it was the 10th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, sort of a review of the whole U.S. involvement, and I must tell you, it was a great thrill for me to spend time with a man like Walter Cronkite, who is an incredible individual. I don't have to tell you how knowledgeable he is and what a fine man he is.
And how long again were you inside this prison?
Well, this particular prison, I was there about two and a half years.
What's your strongest memory of this one?
I think my strongest memory is the heat. When I think about all of the parts of it, it was starting in about March or April. It get very hot in Hanoi, as you noticed when you were there. And our rooms were not ventilated. All of them, the windows and everything were blocked off because they didn't want us to see each other. They kept us isolated. And it used to get incredibly hot in those rooms. And of course, we didn't have any hygiene or anything. We'd get boils, you get dysentery, it would be a very difficult period from then until the rains would start, which would usually be sometime around July or August.
Now, when you went back this time when you went back in '85, did you go back to this prison?
Yes, I did go back to this prison. I tried to go to Wallow prison, the one we're going to see later on, but that's still being used as a prison.
We couldn't get in either.
Yeah, that is a real prison. That, you know, there were stocks on the wooden beds. There were, you know, that was the French. I don't know how the French did architecturally in other ways, but they built a pretty good prison there.
Did you hear much of this noise that we're hearing now when you were inside the prison?
We used to hear a lot of noise outside in the street, yes. And there's also a railroad that runs by next to the prison. I don't know if we're going to see that or not.
Someone said in some article somewhere that they were anxious to go back here so that they could find out what noises they were hearing every day, and they found out that some of them belonged to the vendors of the different products that would come along, and it was kind of like their, what's the... the creamsicle people.
Yes, popsicle. Yeah,
like
the
the bells are
humor
ringing.
Man. Yeah. I remember the hearing those too.
Yeah.
Yes, the Good Humor Man. And what they did was, when the first Americans were shot down, they kept them all in the old French prison I was talking about, Wallow. Then, as the prison population increased, then they branched out into basically two others. This one that we're about to see, and one other that they kept the pilots in.
How many people were here with you?
In that camp, there was about 50 to 60 people. For some reasons we never understood very well, the Vietnamese would move us around from time to time, and we never understood the rhyme or reason for why they did that.
What'd they feed you?
Generally speaking, it was soup and a piece of bread. 3 kinds of soup, 4 months each, and a piece of bread. Again, in the last year to year and a half, the food improved significantly, again, as part of this change in treatment. And none of us have quite understood, except for a combination of things, including international pressures to treat us better and the efforts of millions of Americans on our behalf. You
were there in 1985. What other time have you been back?
A year ago, last April, yes.
And that would have been April of 1991?
1991, yes.
You are a member of the Select Committee?
On POW MIA affairs, yes.
Are you one that believes there are still MIAs or POWs living in Vietnam?
I assume that there's Americans alive until we have as full accounting as possible. We have still not got that full accounting. But, Brian, I have not yet seen hard evidence that there's Americans alive. And I am somewhat pleased at the progress that has been made in the last 6 months to a year.
What are the politics of it? Who are those most anxious to lift the embargo and those who don't want it lifted?
Business in America is very interested in having the embargo lifted. Those that are opposed to it are those that feel that the Vietnamese have still not been totally forthcoming in their efforts to resolve the MIA-POW issue. I think it is generally agreed that the Vietnamese have complied with our demands that they move forward with a peace process in Cambodia as well as their withdrawal. But I think the MIA POW issue still remains a very significant issue to many, many Americans.
Would you have been elected to the United States Senate had you not gone through all this?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that clearly my service gave me some advantage. At the same time, many former military and many former POWs have run for office. I think the American people express their gratitude for past service, but I think most of them elect their elected officials on what they think they're going to do for them in the future. So I think it helped, but I think it helped me, frankly, in being elected to the House. I don't think it had that much effect on my election to the Senate.
Were you in a cell with anyone else in this one we're going to see right now?
I was by myself in this cell.
Could you talk to anyone?
No, but I could tap on the walls, and also the one next door to me, on one side of me was empty, the other side, we developed a method of talking by putting a cup against the wall and wrapping it in a shirt, and we could talk to each other, yes.
Who was next to you?
The guy named Bob Craner, who is now deceased, who was an Air Force major, later colonel, wonderful, most wonderful man I've ever known. He's the most wonderful guy I've ever known.
They're talking to you on the beeper.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a lot more to talk about. I hope we have some time, because this is being taped for the audience that wonders why you're here over a holiday weekend. Let's look at, it's about 9 minutes and 43 seconds long. You're going to see a gentleman by the name of Pham Wa, who is the head of this is a film studio. He says, and you'll see this, that there was a film studio before and a film studio afterward. He agreed to allow us to go to your prison cell if we would watch a film after it was over. And he wouldn't let us tape the film. Said we had to pay for it. But the film was, I suspect, we did sit and watch the film. It was 30 minutes long, and it was black and white film of probably best way to describe it, of how the Vietnamese have been so helpful in letting Americans come into the country, dig up remains, and try to get to the bottom of this. Would you agree with that basic message?
I think in the last 6 months to a year they have been helpful. Maybe not as helpful as they could be, but much more helpful than they have in the past. And a particular signal event was a setting up of an office in Hanoi staffed by Americans, and allow Americans to go any place in the country and look where they want to. That's been a significant change, but the issue is still not resolved.
By the way, when do you think the embargo will be lifted?
I would think if progress continues in the way that it has, that you could see it sometime after the elections. But I think there's a lot of things that need to be resolved yet, particularly in the MIA POW issue.
Which nationally recognized group is the loudest opposed to it in the veterans groups? Excuse me.
There are various organizations, as you know, some that are more, quote, mainstream, such as the National League of Families, and then there's others that are what are viewed by some as splinter groups. I think those that are the less mainstream are very reluctant. I think the League of Families has a position that they're opposed until there's a full accounting, and they have to have great credibility, and I believe they have great credibility. But there has been, as I say, there's been a great deal of progress. We should thank the Vietnamese for that, although we still have not gotten the full cooperation that we need, particularly in the area, in my view, of Laotian, where the Laos problem is. As you know, there were hundreds who went down in Laos and very few ever returned.
As a way of explanation, when C-SPAN went to Hanoi, we had what we call a minder or handler or a guide, you can call it whatever you want to, provided by the government. His name was Mr. Hung. You'll see him in this video. And we asked the minute we got there if we could go to the prison where Senator McCain was held, and they said, we'll get you there one way or the other. We didn't know quite when we were going to go there. It wasn't a great mystery. But one afternoon, he said it's time to go, and we had plenty of time to do it. What you're going to see is haphazard, ad hoc. We walked in, sat down, visited with the, actually I don't remember the gentleman's rank, but he's in the Army. And our cameraman was Greg Gursky, and we took off into prison 29. And then at the end, and I hope it's with this, you'll hear, I wanted to go up on the corner of the prison just to listen for a while to see what you could hear, and we'll see if that's there, because we haven't talked to our producer whether that made it or not. This is about 9 minutes long, and if you don't mind watching, we'll come back and get your reaction to it.
Good.
Chúng tôi cái nhà này từ cái khu này rồi lại đằng kia là sau này chúng tôi mới xây, sau năm 73 chúng tôi mới xây. Chứ còn các cái nhà từ cái cột ở đây dọc suốt cái nhà kia cả. Đấy. Thế còn cái nhà kia về sau này tôi mới xây đấy. Thế còn
đến cái chỗ mà cái bình kia gì ạ?
À đấy chỗ cái bảng đấy. Là nguyên khi giữ nguyên.
Vâng. So the section over there is newly built from the car, you know, forward is newly built, and from the tail of the car, so backward there to the board is intact.
So these were cells right here.
Thế còn đây có phải là nơi giam ạ?
Không.
No.
Đây là chúng tôi giữ. Chúng tôi chỉ bàn giao lại toàn bộ tất cả cái khu này. Thế còn chúng tôi giữ lại cái chỗ này là cái kho của chúng tôi đựng phim mà.
This is storage of film studio. We store our films in this.
Và cái buồng chiếu là của chúng tôi.
Yeah. Over there, this screen.
Thế còn cái chỗ mà cái tường lũng này thì dạo ấy là phải ngăn lại bằng ván thôi. Bằng ván thôi. Ngăn lại bằng ván thì tôi có xem lại cái sinh hoạt của các tù binh sinh hoạt như thế nào. Thì tôi đứng đây tôi xem.
And I observe the life, the daily life of American pilots from this position. I stay there and observe the behavior of American pilots.
Were the American pilots out here in this courtyard?
Thế họ có chơi ở sân này không ạ?
Chơi sân này này.
Yeah, they here in the courtyard.
Đây nhá, tôi xin nói là cái nhà này không có này.
At the time, there was no this house.
That building wasn't there, right there.
Wasn't
cái
there.
nhà. Đây là một cái vườn hoa.
This is a courtyard and a flower plant.
Thế và giữa cái vườn hoa là xây một cái hầm tròn.
And in the middle of the courtyard there is a shelter.
Để cho tù binh Mỹ khi có máy bay đến ngăn chặn thì tù binh Mỹ xuống hầm đó.
When American planes were approaching, hovering on the sky, so all American pilots, you know, went down to the shelter, bomb shelter for American pilots.
So there's a shelter underneath
The
it.
shelter in the middle.
In the middle?
Đấy. Cái cây này này, chúng tôi tiếc cái cây này cho nên chúng tôi mang ra đây trồng này. Tức là trồng ở trên nóc cái hầm ấy.
These trees were on the top of the bomb shelter and we moved it over there.
Trồng nóc cái hầm ấy, tôi tiếc thì tôi cho đánh ra kia để trồng cho nó cây xanh.
Thế còn cái chỗ giam.
Thế còn cái chỗ giam đây. Cái nhà này cũng có đấy nhé. Cái nhà này sau này tôi mới xây đấy.
This building wasn't there.
Có.
At that time.
Anh Đạt đấy. Cho nó vào cái buồng này. Đây, cái buồng này là buồng chính cái buồng của ông Dương Mắc Kên.
This is the cell where Mr. John McCain was being kept.
How long, did you know?
Thưa ông là bao nhiêu lâu ạ? Trong khoảng ở đây bao nhiêu?
Tôi không nhớ đâu. Vì tôi không quản, tôi không biết đâu.
Because I was not in charge of American pilot prisoners.
Was he here by himself?
Thì cái nguyên bản của nó đấy, nó chỉ khác có như thế này nhé, tôi biết. Vì tôi về thì tôi cho cải tạo. Tất cả cái này vẫn nguyên này.
This was during John McCain's time here.
Vẫn nguyên. Cái giường thì chúng tôi lâu nó hỏng rồi, chứ cái giường rất dài.
There is a very long bed.
Thế và đây các bạn ấy này, trong này là có đào các cái hầm để nhỡ mà máy bay mà tù binh không kịp chạy thì lăn luôn xuống hầm.
Here also the personal, just for one person shelter. If they could not, you know, manage to go there, to go down to the bomb shelter, they can, you know.
There was a shelter underneath there? What is this room used for now?
Thưa ông là cái phòng này dùng để làm gì bây giờ?
Không, buồng thế này giờ thì chúng tôi vẫn là buồng làm việc.
Just working place.
Làm việc đấy. Cho một số đồng chí làm việc ở đây, bạn làm việc ở đây. Thế còn đấy thì cái cửa thì nó có khác đây, cửa chúng tôi thay thành cửa chớp trước kia cửa tấm.
So we have made these doors later.
These doors were not here?
No, it was other doors, not this one.
Thế còn đấy thì là đấy, ông John McCain cũng đã từng đến đây rồi.
John McCain also came here.
Tóc mọc trắng mà chúng tôi cũng quay làm kỷ niệm
with white hair.
Và cũng tiếp ở trong buồng cũng như là tiếp các ngài vẫn vậy.
And we also were receiving Mr. John McCain in the same room where I have receptive this.
Where we just talked.
Thế còn ấy, thì các bạn muốn xem cái sinh hoạt ấy, thì đây nó là cái bếp ngày xưa đấy.
Oh, there is the kitchen.
Cái bếp ấy thì là để nấu nướng cho ăn tù binh ăn.
For cooking food for Americans.
Where's the kitchen?
Thế ông, cái bếp là chỗ nào ạ?
Bếp ngay chỗ này.
Đằng
Tức
sau
là
này
tiếp ý giờ tôi vẫn là cái bếp, giờ tôi cho phá rồi.
Vâng.
Phá rồi. Bây giờ hiện tại nó vẫn còn một số. Đấy, cái khu này là cái khu tắm của tù binh đấy. Lúc đó tôi sẽ hướng dẫn thêm. Đây nó cũng là các cái nhà cũ đấy, cũng đang ở chỗ này, cũng có.
Yeah. This is also cells for American pilots.
Trước là các cái nhà ở chúng tôi thì nó như thế nào thì là chúng tôi vẫn để nguyên như thế này thôi. Còn khu này là không có này, sau đó thì mới xây.
This is newly built. This quarter.
Khi mà tôi về tôi nhận ấy, thì có buồng thì 2 giường, buồng thì 3 giường. 3 giường.
There are 2 beds and maybe 3 beds on one cell.
Thế còn cái bếp thì ở trong này.
Let's go to the kitchen.
Không là các bạn đi xuống đây thành cái bếp cũ đó đây này. Cái bếp cũ nó như thế này thôi, còn thì là cái bếp ở phía đằng sau chúng tôi cho phá rồi.
This is kitchen, and there is another section of the kitchen over there.
Bếp tôi cho phá rồi, thế còn để lại chỗ này thôi.
Another section was destroyed.
Đấy, cái bể nước cũ của nó vẫn thế kia, vẫn để nguyên.
Oh, there's the water reservoir.
Đấy, các bạn có cần xem cái chỗ tắm đấy, tôi giới thiệu ra.
We go to the place where American pilots washing place.
Em có ngã nhé, có trơn gì nào. Đây nhá. Đây là phải xây cho tù binh cái bể tắm đây này. Ở phong tục Việt Nam tôi thì tắm dội thôi chứ không có bể này đâu.
Yeah, this is a bathtub.
Thế nhưng mà chúng tôi phải xây cho tù binh Mỹ đấy là các cái bể để họ tắm ngâm cơ.
We build up this tub for American pilots.
Bây giờ chúng tôi vẫn còn giữ, giờ chúng tôi biến nó thành cái bể chân nước.
And we turn the bathtub into water reservoir now.
Cái phong tục Việt Nam tôi tắm là dội chứ không ngâm nữa.
We Vietnamese people don't use bathtub.
What is that? Is that the street right out there?
Thưa ông, là đằng kia là cái phố á?
Đằng kia là phố.
Yeah.
Cái cầu ở sau đấy.
As street over there.
Phùng Hưng. Nguyên Chi vẫn thế.
Yeah.
Trước nó vẫn có cái điện ở đây.
May I edit a bit?
Be our guest.
First of all, the windows were all bricked over, so the only ventilation came from some small holes near the top.
So when he said that window had been there with the bars on it, that was not true.
It had been there with the bars on it, but they had just bricked it over, put bricks on it, because they kept us isolated and they didn't want us to see or communicate with each other. Second of all, there was never any bomb shelter that I saw during the two and a half years I was in that prison, nor did we ever go to any bomb shelter, because then we would have had to obviously be together, and they didn't want that to happen. That was true about the bathing area. There was a little, that exactly as you saw it, they would close you in, and you had a cup, and you would pour water, could pour water on yourself. We bathed infrequently, and part of that was not because of any cruelty, but there was a very erratic supply of water, particularly in the summertime when they just didn't have water in the city. The large house you saw in the background a couple of times, it looked like a large building, we called the big house, and that's where we would be taken for interrogations, up to that area. And they had several rooms so that they could interrogate more than one prisoner at the same time. And that area that you saw where the trucks were under, that was not there. It was when we were there, was a central courtyard that was dirt, basically, wasn't over. But the rest of it was fairly accurate depiction.
Mr. Famwa suggested that you all got together out there in the courtyard.
We never got together in the courtyard. I remember one time it was Christmas Day, and I think it was maybe 1968, Christmas Day or '69. I'm not. When they allowed each of us separately to stand outside of our cell for about 5 minutes. It was a wonderful event. So no, we didn't spend any time out in the courtyard together. Again, not so much out of cruelty, but they knew, and correctly, you keep people isolated, don't let them organize, don't let us exercise our chain of command, you break down resistance much easier.
Do you think he's telling untruths or just doesn't know?
I think combination of both. You know, they like to, I understand the other prison now that they've got flowers all around it and it looks real nice and all that. So I think probably a combination of both. But as he said, he was not there. It was told to him by others. So. But it was a little different.
Now, how has this changed since you were back in '85? By the way, did you go back last year to your old prison site?
No, I did not go back. No, I did not last year. That shed had been built where the trucks were underneath was about the only change that I saw.
Which prison had the better conditions?
That one clearly, because the cells in Wallow, the one we're going to see later on, I guess, the old French-built prison, were much smaller, much more tightly guarded, and we believe that they kept the people that they treated as kind of special prisoners, so they kept them in Wallow. Mine because my father was an admiral, others because they'd attempted to escape. It was I think, a tougher environment back in the real Hilton, as we called it.
Over the 5.5 years that you were in 3 different prisons in and around Hanoi, how much mail did you get?
I received about 3 letters from my family. One of them, actually 2 of them, no, I guess all 3 when the Vietnamese were offering me release in 1968.
How many letters did you send, and how many got back here?
About 40 to 50 I sent, and I think they got about 10.
When did you come back to the United States?
1973, March 1973.
Did you have a recuperative period?
I had to go to the hospital and get an operation, actually 2 operations on my leg, and then I went directly to the National War College after that, here in Washington.
For those who have just joined us, a couple of quick things. Again, what were the 5.5 years you were in the Hanoi prisons?
Yes, I was there.
What years?
1967, 1973.
Why didn't you get out of the service when you got back?
I loved the Navy, and I was able to get back on flying status, and I was able to continue flying, which, by the way, took some skill to do, but after a certain number of years I failed my flying physical, and so I had to get out. My physical injuries caught up with me to a large degree.
We read so much about the impact, and I've heard a lot about the impact on the individuals, the stress, the post-Vietnam stress syndrome that we keep hearing so much about. Has that impacted you at all?
I've never had a nightmare. I've never had a flashback. I've never had any particular memories, except the ones that I cherish are the friends that I made and the wonderful relationships that we forged together. I hold no bitterness nor anger, and I would attribute part of that to the fact that I was 29 years old when I was shot down and captured, and I was a professional military pilot. Many of the people that we find that have difficulties and have not, or either difficulties readjusting or have not readjusted, many of them were the 18, 19-year-old young draftees who went and served and frankly were very badly treated on their return, in my view, and not given the welcome home which we've belatedly given them after Operation Desert Storm.
What's the legacy of Vietnam?
Never again should we go into a conflict unless we are clear in our goals and we are prepared to do what is necessary to win victory as rapidly as possible. I think in retrospect, maybe 100 years from now, it will have been good for America to define the limits of power. Up until that time, as you know, we could go anywhere, bear any burden in the world, in the words of John F. Kennedy. We understood, and I hope we continue to understand, the limits of use of military power, and although Desert Storm was a wonderful success, which we're all proud of, we have to be very, very selective where we send young Americans to fight and die.
We have a last bit of tape to show you. This is the Hoa Lo prison, which is in a different part of the town. What do you remember about this when you look at it?
Well, this prison that you're going to see, as I mentioned, was built in 1943 by the French, and it was well built. It has a lot of cells in it, all of them solitary cells. They're small. They have many of them have stocks on the wooden bed. They have small, open little doors, peepholes for the guards to look through, and I think it would have been a very tough place to live for us, but also for the Vietnamese when the French had that prison. It is still used, I'm told, as a prison by the Vietnamese. You're seeing one of the entrances there, I believe, to the prison. And there was no exercise area or any open area like we saw in the other prison.
How many were there with you?
There was about, I think there was about 50 or 60 of us in there at one time. And then after they moved us all into large, see, this you can't tell us too much from the camera, but this prison covers a very large city block, Part we were in were where the individual cells are. In 1970 and 71, they moved us into large cells with 40 or 50 each, which was in another part of the prison. And as I say, the large cells were quite nice as compared with the small ones, to say the least.
We were there on a couple of different days. I remember one day when I was there, and I don't have the tape right now, but standing, looking at the prison, and there aren't many cars in Hanoi, all of a sudden a 27-car procession came by with the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He had a 200-person delegation in Hanoi, all for the purpose of setting up a trade relation. And you saw that the entire time you were, at least I saw it the entire time I was in Vietnam. Lee Kuan Yew, former Prime Minister of Singapore, was there also while we were there. Does it worry you on the trade side that we may be waiting too long to lift this embargo?
It does worry me. Clearly those countries, especially Japan, are moving into those markets, and they have shown that they're fertile markets. I mean, the Vietnamese, when given the opportunity, look what they've done here in America, are very industrious, productive people, as long as they don't have this communist doctrine guiding them. At the same time, I think we have to face reality, and that is the American people are not prepared to extend that to the Vietnamese until there's a full accounting as possible of those who are still listed as missing in action. I'd also point out that it's a very, very poor country, and there's not an instant market there. It's one of the lowest per capita incomes in the world. So when we talk about all this market there, a lot of it is there in the form of natural resources. As you know, there's the belief that there's oil and gas there, and I think American companies could take advantage of that. And I also think that sometimes we cannot just put commercial interests paramount to all others, and they have to be balanced against a lot of other issues that face this country. And I think it's also well to point out one other fact. A lot of Americans still resent the fact that Vietnam was the country that inflicted the first defeat on this country, and we have to get over that part of it too, which I think we are with the ending of the Cold War.
Will you go back?
Yes, I would go back if it would do some good. You know, the reason why I didn't go back this time with Senator Kerry and Senator Smith was because I had been there the year before, and I didn't see anything particularly beneficial to going back this time that they couldn't do. And the other thing is I always have to be a little bit careful that the Vietnamese don't try again to somehow use me for their own purposes. And you just have to be a little rather careful to that. But they are. It's interesting how much my name is known around Vietnam. It's amazing.
As you know, anybody can travel there.
Yes.
Any American, although American travel agents, and I'm not sure what the last couple of weeks has been, but they have to go through an Australian travel agent or Hong Kong or whatever. Do you recommend to veterans or even people who have never been there that they go?
It's a lovely country. There are some parts of it that are magnificently beautiful. I think that many of our veterans have found it to be very therapeutic to travel back to Vietnam. I think they have enormous tourist potential if they had the right kind of system again. And I would recommend that people go if they so choose. I think they should understand, one, that the conditions are still not good as far as hygiene and that kind of thing are concerned, as I think you will attest. I think also they got to understand accommodations are still very, very poor. And I think they also have to understand that the Vietnamese are going to rip them off every chance they get. Didn't you notice that? They had their hand out for every car, every driver, every, you know, you're kind of at their mercy because there's no rental car, there's no kind of thing.
I must say, though, it was much more prevalent in the South than it was in the North with the handout. And there were fewer hands out in Hanoi than there were in Saigon.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. So I think you have to understand that it is really roughing it. Although, as you noticed, there's a floating hotel in Saigon that the Australians have brought around, which I understand are good accommodations. When I was in South Vietnam, I stayed at the old Rex Hotel, which many of our veterans will recognize was an R&R hotel in Saigon, and I swear to you, it hadn't changed a bit.
We stayed there.
You know, the bar on top on the roof and all that had not changed a bit. It was like a leap backwards about 20 years historically. But I don't think there's any doubt that they will improve and their tourist facilities will improve, et cetera. And I've talked to many Vietnam veterans who felt it was a great and healing experience for them to go back. I strongly recommend they do so if they feel that that's best for them. I've talked to some others that say, look, I never want to see the place again. All it does is dredge up old terrible memories. So I think it's up to the individual. I do believe there are parts of the country, as you noticed, Ha Long Bay, I believe it is, and some others that are really lovely places. But again, the accommodations aren't much.
Must report to you that in Hanoi there's a new renovated hotel called the Metropole. It was there when you were there, but the French have come in and renovated it, 109 rooms and about $100 a night per room. And it's 40% owned by the French and 60% owned by the Vietnamese.
And I think we would also agree, although it's very run down, the city of Hanoi is very pretty with the trees and the old French buildings and all that. If they could spruce it up, get some paint and some things, it would be a very pretty old city, very attractive.
Senator McCain, we're out of time. Thank you for sharing your experience with us on this special Vietnam Revisited.
Thank you, Brian. And could I say on Memorial Day, which is Monday, a lot of this is going to be shown, we should appreciate the service and sacrifice, not only those who are still around, but those who are not. And we will always cherish their memories.
Thank you.
You've been watching a program from the C-SPAN archives with Arizona Senator John McCain, who has died at the age of 81. The six-term senator is survived by his wife Cindy and 7 children and his 106-year-old mother, Roberta McCain. Here on C-SPAN this morning, Washington Journal is next, live with your phone calls and a look at today's headlines. That's followed by Newsmakers with Center for American Progress President and CEO Neera Tanden. And later, Vice President Pence talks about the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh at a luncheon hosted by the Republican National Lawyers Association.
Tonight on Q&A, National Constitution Center President and CEO Jeffrey Rosen talks about his biography of William Howard Taft.
He never learned politics. I mean, he never learned politics. He told his aide, Archie Butt, who served both Roosevelt and Taft as an intimate aide, I will not play a part for popularity. If the people want to reject me, that's their prerogative. He has this Madisonian view. His heroes are James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, the authors of the Federalist Papers, and John Marshall, who he considers the greatest American ever. And Madison and Hamilton believed that majorities should rule, but only slowly and thoughtfully over time. so that reason rather than passion could prevail. And Taft believes that the entire system is set up to slow the direct expression of popular passion so that the people can be governed in the public interest rather than through faction, that is, mobs that favor self-interest rather than the public good.
Tonight at 8 Eastern on C-SPAN's Q&A.
Coming up on today's Washington Journal, Linda Feldman with the Science Monitor and John Gizzi from Newsmax discuss the future of the Trump presidency. And later, the Rand Corporation's Rebecca Zimmerman joins us to talk about the U.S. strategy in Afghanistan.
Flags at the U.S. Capitol are flying at half-staff today in honor of U.S. Senator John McCain, who died Saturday at age 81. McCain was a Naval Academy graduate, a Vietnam War aviator and prisoner of war, a congressman, senator, and Republican presidential candidate. He will lie in state inside the U.S. Capitol before being buried on the grounds of the U.S. Naval Academy in nearby Annapolis. We want to know your thoughts on Senator John McCain. Republicans call in at 202-748-8001. Democrats call in at 202-748-8000. And independents, you can call in at 202-748-8002. And you can always reach us on social media, on Twitter at CSpanWJ, and on Facebook at facebook.com/CSpan. Senator John McCain passed away yesterday, and we got a statement from Senator McCain's office that reads this: Senator John Sidney McCain III died at 4:28 p.m. on August 25th, 2018. With the senator when he passed were his wife Cindy and their family. At his death, he had served the United States of America faithfully for 60 years. Shortly after his cancer diagnosis last July, Senator McCain spoke on the floor about the mission of the Senate and what an honor it is to serve. Here's what he had to say.
What greater cause could we hope to serve in helping keep America the strong, aspiring, inspirational beacon of liberty and defender of the dignity of all human beings and their right to freedom and equal justice? That is the cause that binds us and is so much more powerful and worthy than the small differences that divide us. What a great honor and extraordinary opportunity it is to serve in this body. It's a privilege to serve with all of you. I mean it. Many of you have reached out in the last few days with your concern and your prayers, and it means a lot to me. It really does. I've had so many people say such nice things about me recently that I think some of you must have me confused with someone else. I appreciate it, though, every word, even if much of it isn't deserved. I'll be here for a few days. I hope managing the floor debate on the defense authorization bill, which I'm proud to say is again a product of bipartisan cooperation and trust among the members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. After that, I'm going home for a while to treat my illness. I have every intention of returning here and giving many of you cause to regret all the nice things you said about me. And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company.
Senator McCain's wife, Cindy McCain, tweeted this out yesterday. I love my husband with all my heart. God bless everyone who has cared for my husband along this journey. Let's go to Jerome, who's calling from Detroit, Michigan, on the independent line. Good morning, Jerome. You're on the air.
Good morning. You know, I wasn't a big fan of John McCain, but I like people who stand up for their values. Here's what I want you to pay close attention to today, you and your audience. Watch the hypocrites come out of the woodwork. Mr. Trump likes winners, not people that get caught. They just christened the Navy a vessel, I guess, the other day under the name of John McCain. Would not say the man's name. I mean, you know, Don't worry about him. He's dying anyway. You know, I would not invite this guy to the funeral. I wouldn't accept him coming to the funeral. I was raised that you either are what you are. Don't be a hypocrite. And don't be a phony. If this guy goes up there and he stands anywhere in the rotunda when it comes to John McCain, he's a phony. And anybody that falls, you're going to get some Republican callers. They called him everything but a child of God, and you know that. And it's going to be very interesting. Don't forget, he likes people that didn't get caught. He doesn't like people that got caught, that were POWs. You know, they just 2 weeks ago, like I told you before, they christened the vessel. The name of the vessel was John McCain. Refused to say the man's name. Thank you very much. Just listen out for the hypocrisy. It's coming.
Here's a tweet from President Donald Trump on the passing of John McCain. My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you. Let's go to Joan, who's calling from Silver Spring, Maryland, on the Democratic line. Joan, good morning.
Oh, good morning. I'm calling in regards to Senator McCain.
Yes.
He was absolutely a person who works for his country. He is a God-sent man, and I hope everybody could be just like him in the Senate.
Let's go to Luke, who's calling from Long Beach Island, New Jersey, on the Republican line. Luke, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, yeah. Is this Joey's Pizza?
No, Luke, you're on the air, C-SPAN, Washington Journal. Let's go to Jack, who's calling from Providence, Rhode Island. Jack, good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Senator McCain was a man of endurance. He endured torture and surviving under those conditions, being a man of endurance. He was not a war hero. He was simply shot down. He didn't have like any valor in battle, you know, going into the machine gun fire or anything like that, even though he was being shot at, you know, by anti-aircraft fire. I know warfare quite well. But he's a man of endurance, but he did do some bad things, though, too. Like on the Senate floor, he said he would want to get rid of Obamacare. Then he voted to keep it going. Okay, that's not really discussed. But overall, you got to give him, I would say, an A, because he was a man of endurance. And I have a question for you, sir. Is his mother still alive?
I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, maybe you can find out, because his mother really, is over. I think she's still alive. I think.
Okay. Here's a statement from Senator Mitch McConnell, who is the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. Today is a deeply sad day for the Senate and for our nation. Elaine and I join all Americans in mourning the passing of our dear friend and colleague, Senator John McCain. In an era filled with cynicism about national unity and public service, John McCain's life shone as a bright example. He showed us that boundless patriotism and self-sacrifice are not outdated concepts or cliches, but the building blocks of an extraordinary American life. Generations of McCains have served in our great Navy. John followed their example with distinction. And from his cell in Hanoi to the halls of the Senate, he never stopped fighting with courage and determination. First for his country, then for the people of Arizona, and always for the ideals he believed in most. Let's go to Steve, who's calling from Vacaville, California, on the Democratic line. Steve, good morning.
Yes, good morning, C-SPAN, and all my fellow Americans. I am 65 years old, a labor Democrat, 32-year retired Teamster truck driver from Northern California, very active in my life. And I have the utmost respect for the Republican American hero. This is a genuine American hero. Yeah, I disagreed a few things with Senator McCain. I watch C-SPAN regularly. I've seen him on the Senate floor. We're going to have disagreements, but I am going to drive my car to Arizona wherever they lay that man down, and I will sleep in my car if I can't find a hotel, to respect him and his family for their service, and his father and his grandfather to our country. I never had the pleasure to serve our country. I would have, but in the armed service, I have a big American flag in front of my house lit all night long for those veterans and their spouses and children when they were killed serving our country. I do it out of respect. And President Trump, I won't disrespect him or the office, but I have never been more embarrassed to have a person like him leading our country, and all the things he said about Senator McCain, and now he tweets out this nicety that one of his handlers printed for him, and it's ridiculous. But the McCain family, America's heart is broken, and I'll be there, and it'll say, California Labor Democrats, rest in peace, Mr. McCain, Senator McCain. Thank you.
To answer a previous caller's question, Senator McCain's mother is still alive, and there's a story actually in People magazine about Senator McCain's mother. Senator John McCain's mother, Roberta, is aware that her son is stopping treatment for stage 4 brain cancer, People has learned. Roberta is 106, but she's spunky. A close family friend exclusively tells People she knows he is ill. So the caller who asked previously about Senator McCain's mother, yes, she is still alive, and she was aware that her son was stopping treatment for his brain cancer, but we don't have any more information after that point. So let's go to Ralph, who's calling from Michigan on the independent line. Good morning, Ralph.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I would like to see people from both sides try to emulate the dignity that Mr. McCain clearly demonstrated throughout his life. Stop calling people idiots, stop calling people losers, stop calling people Nazis or white supremacists. Do that for a week and respect the other person's right to have a different viewpoint, and maybe in emulating Senator McCain for that amount of period, maybe they can discover the dignity within themselves.
Thank you. Let's go to Ralph, who's calling from Eagleville, Missouri on the Democratic line. I'm sorry, this is James calling in from Eagleville, Missouri. James, are you on the air?
Yes, I am.
Good morning. What do you have to say?
Hey, I served on the Forrestal. I wonder why we're not showing a picture of the Forrestal when it exploded, when John McCain was sitting on the tarmac on that thing. You know, I'm sorry. This president hid behind his daddy's dress so that he didn't have to go. And John McCain is a great American hero. This man put up with a lot, and survived. So all I got to say is, hey, I love you, man. I'm a Forrestal Navy. I spent time in the Air Force, Navy, and in the Army, and I'm very proud to say I served on Forrestal, the same aircraft carrier that John McCain served on. I thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a tweet from Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is one of Senator McCain's closest friends in the U.S. Senate. And Senator Graham tweeted, "America and freedom have lost one of her greatest champions, and I've lost one of my dearest friends and mentor. I will need time to absorb this, but I want Cindy and the entire McCain family to know they are in my prayers." Let's go to Freddie, who's calling from Port Huron, Michigan on the independent line. Freddie, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yes. How's it going?
I'm doing fine. What do you have to say this morning, Freddie?
Well, John McCain, he caused a lot of trouble in Washington, with that thumbs down on the bill. I actually think he was like a double agent,
Freddie, which bill are you talking about?
About the Medicare and that, the health care.
The Obamacare bill?
Yes, and as far as him being lost and that in the war, they should have made him pay for the plane he lost, as far as I'm concerned. He wasn't no hero. He was a joke.
Freddie, did you serve as well?
was in the Marine Corps, yes.
You were in the Marine Corps. What do you think about his time in Vietnam as a prisoner of war? Do you think that counts as being a war hero?
No. He got caught. That's what's going to happen. You know, they should have just done him in. You know, and that would have saved this country a lot of grief with him getting involved with everything. You know, and screwing things up. That's the way I feel about it.
All right, thank you, Freddie. Let's go to Luann, who's calling from Las Vegas, Nevada. Luann, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. What do you have to say this morning, Luann?
Our sympathy is for the family of Senator McCain. May his soul rest in peace. I just have one. It is so sad that he is into this state right now. The country needs him, but then one only regret that I have for him, we voted for him against Barack Obama. That's the first step that we got from Democrat to being a Republican. And then what saddened me is the fact that we were waiting for his vote on the floor at 2 a.m., and then he stands up for the change of Obamacare. So now, before the Obamacare, I was paying $42 per payday on my medical together with my husband. With the Obamacare, I cannot even choose my health care. Now I'm paying triple, $178 per payday. That's close to $400. That's the only regret I have for our dear senator. May his soul rest in peace. This is only because of his hatred for Trump and not because of his service for the American people. That's the only regret I have for him. Again, may his soul rest in peace and God bless him. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in a floor speech in July, Senator McCain talked about why he wasn't voting for the repeal of Obamacare and called for a return to order. Here's what he had to say.
Our health care insurance system is a mess. We all know it, those who support Obamacare and those who oppose it. Something has to be done. We Republicans have looked for a way to end it and replace it with something else without paying a terrible political price. We haven't found it yet, and I'm not sure we will. All we've managed to do is make more popular a policy that wasn't very popular when we started trying to get rid of it. I voted for the motion to proceed to allow debate to continue and amendments to be offered. I will not vote for this bill as it is today. It's a shell of a bill right now. We all know that. I have changes urged by my state's governor that will have to be included to earn my support for final passage of any bill. I know many of you will have to see the bill change substantially for you to support it. We've tried to do this by coming up with a proposal behind closed doors in consultation with the administration, then springing it on skeptical members, trying to convince them that it's better than nothing, that it's better than nothing, asking us to swallow our doubts and force it past a unified opposition. I don't think that's going to work in the end, and probably shouldn't. The administration and congressional Democrats shouldn't have forced through Congress without any opposition support a social and economic change as massive as Obamacare. And we shouldn't do the same with ours. Why don't we try the old way of legislating in the Senate? The way our rules and customs encourage us to act. If this process ends in failure, which seems likely, then let's return to regular order. Let the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee under Chairman Alexander and Ranking Member Murray hold hearings, try to report a bill out of committee with contributions from both sides. Something that my dear friends on the other side of the aisle didn't allow to happen 9 years ago. Let's see if we can pass something that will be imperfect, full of compromises, and not very pleasing to implacable partisans on either side, but that might provide workable solutions to problems Americans are struggling with today. What have we to lose by trying to work together to find those solutions? We're not getting done much apart. I don't think any of us feels very proud of our incapacity. Merely preventing your political opponents from doing what they want isn't the most inspiring work. There's greater satisfaction in respecting our differences, but not letting them prevent agreements that don't require abandonment of core principles, agreements made in good faith that help improve lives and protect the American people. The Senate is capable of that. We know that. We've seen it before. I've seen it happen many times, and the times when I was involved, even in a modest way, with working on a bipartisan response to a national problem or threat, are the proudest moments of my career and by far the most satisfying.
Tributes are coming in from people on all sides of the political spectrum today. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer of New York tweeted this out earlier today. The Senate, the United States, and the world are lesser places without John McCain. Nothing will overcome the loss of Senator McCain, but so that generations remember him, I will be introducing a resolution to rename the Russell Building after him. Now, the Russell Building is one of the 3 Senate office buildings and one of the buildings where Senator John McCain worked during his time in the U.S. Senate. Let's go to Kevin, who's calling from Whiteville, Virginia, on the Democratic line. Kevin, good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, I vote Democrat and disagree with John McCain, but I think America's been blessed by this man that served this country, and I hope God blesses his family in that. And he served America very well. And the guy that said he should pay for his airplane, how about maybe the soldiers during World War II who got shot down over Nazi Germany? Maybe they should have paid for their airplanes too, huh? No, that's ridiculous, man. His country sent him to Vietnam, and he served his country well, man. And we've been blessed by this man. And I got all the admiration in that for this guy. You know, people just want to run him down. I can't believe that, man. No respect. It's ridiculous, man. We need to come together as Americans. That's all, me. And I hope God does bless his family and take care of him. My prayers are with them. And thank you for having me call.
Let's go to Sharon, who's calling from Whiting, Indiana, on the Democratic line. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I disagreed with Senator McCain on a lot of things. But the day that he stood up during his campaign and took the mic away from that lady and said that Obama was just another man like him, that showed me the kind of man he is. He isn't just a war hero. He's a hero. And I want to give all my blessings to his family. Thank you.
Let's go to Howard, who's calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on the Republican line. Howard, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, C-SPAN. I'm a Republican, I guess. I'm really not anything, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like right there in the middle, and I know that we all make mistakes, you know, and we all regret them. And I'm sure that John McCain has his own mistakes, just like everybody on the planet has their own mistakes that they deal with in their life. John McCain was a great man. He might have done things. He might have said things that weren't approved by other people. That's okay. That's what makes us different. Until we figure out a way to stop blaming people for things, we're never going to be at peace. I mean, we're always going to be fighting. Let today be the day, the beginning. Let this be the stepping stone to peace. We don't need to bash people because of their differences. We don't need to blame people for our differences. Let's come together, find a way to make solutions instead of making enemies. I mean, without that, we're going to hate each other for the rest of our life, and we're always going to be bashing one side or the other. It's time to stop this. You know, Donald Trump is the president. Nobody else is going to be able to do anything about it. You know what I'm saying? Let him finish his term. If he makes mistakes, so be it. You know, John McCain did the same thing whenever he went through the deal. He did what he had to do, whether he made a mistake or not, and I respect him for that. God bless John McCain, his family, and may your soul rest in peace. God bless America.
Let's go to Theresa, who's calling from Columbus, Ohio, on the independent line. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. Thank you, C-SPAN. I really appreciate what you do, but more than that, I appreciate John McCain. I voted for him in 2008. I was an Army brat. My dad served 2 tours in Vietnam, born the same year. I feel like part of my life has been walked through with this man, and my heart goes out to his family, of course, and the suffering that they're going through this morning, as my dad died from cancer, too, when I was 36 years old, so especially his daughter. But more than that, I just want to say that he espoused to integrity, to honor, and he was a true patriot. And I'm very offended by anyone that can get on this phone this morning and demean this man. But you know what? He would say, that's okay, because this is America, and they're allowed to say what they want. That's what we fought for. So that's all I have for you this morning. And again, God bless John McCain, and God bless his family, and my prayers are with them. Thank you.
Let's go to Javier, who's calling from Compton, California. Good morning.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Thank you for your journalism. I want to say I appreciate not only his time as for serving for our country, and also for his dedication on not just having a career but a family person, and be able to be a living legend as to conquer what he did, and also go back to the basics and be able to have the decency to pass a message from one message to another, even though it removed a white-collar person or undergrad student. And I'm from California, and I appreciate that. I'm Mexican by blood by my parents, and I appreciate, I never served for the military, but I would imagine when somebody, goes through that type of trauma and still have the courage to carry on his goals and be able to have that growth. For me, it's like a living person, and I want to say, family, we also grieving, and for good or bad, thank God, he taught us a lot, and he set the standards for a lot of people, persons, and he was more than a leader than a follower. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator John McCain ran for president at least twice. First, losing in the Republican primary to President George W. Bush, and then losing the presidency to President Barack Obama. And here's what Barack Obama had to say about the passing of Senator McCain. John McCain and I were members of different generations, came from completely different backgrounds, and competed at the highest level of politics. But we shared, for all of our differences, a fidelity to something higher, the ideals for which generations of Americans and immigrants alike have fought, marched, and sacrificed. We saw our political battles even as a privilege, something noble, an opportunity to serve as stewards of those high ideals at home and to advance them around the world. We saw this country as a place where anything is possible, and citizenship as our patriotic obligation to ensure it forever remains that way. Few of us have been tested the way John once was, or required to show the kind of courage that he did. But all of us can aspire to the courage to put the greater good above our own. At John's best, he showed us what that means, and for that, we are all in his debt. Michelle and I send our most heartfelt condolences to Cindy and their family. Let's go to CJ, who's calling from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on the independent line. CJ, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, CJ.
I'm laughing about the hypocrisy, particularly from the news media, who, when Senator McCain was running for president, was said to be mean, spiteful, and just a bad person. And now they're coming out and saying how wonderful he was. Just usual news media, Democrat-loving news media.
Let's go to John, who's calling from Chicago, Illinois, on the Democratic line. Good morning, John.
Yeah, this is John from Hegewisch. On behalf of American Legion Post 272, we send our deepest sympathies and prayers to the McCain family and to Freddie and this knucklehead from Louisiana that just got off the line. Come to American Legion Post 272 in Hegewisch in Chicago, and we can have a great discussion about this great man instead of you two ridiculing this fella on a public telephone. Thank you, America.
Let's go to Kim, who's calling from Rossville, Georgia, on the independent line. Kim, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Good, bad, or indifferent. POWs, regardless, survive for a reason. Thank you for your service.
Let's go to Jean, who's calling from Arcadia, Louisiana, on the Democratic line. Jean, good morning.
Hi, good morning. You know, I'm an African American, and though, you know, I did not always agree with Senator McCain, he was a man of integrity. I just remember when they had the 2008 presidential election, how he corrected this elderly Caucasian woman who was afraid of Barack Obama because he was an Arab, but he told her no, said that he is a good family man, and he's just, you know, he's just the same as me. The only difference is that we just don't have the same politics ideas. And that is just really how it really should be. It's nothing wrong to be a Republican, Democrat, Independent, but we should all be able to disagree, as the man once called in and said that we should do. And I just have, great respect for him. And also, can you imagine this? And I'm sorry, sir, this vow thing that we have, number 45 in the White House now, having such integrity. And I say this, sir, because Trump is a racist, a bully, a liar, and that is not acceptable. I will never accept that from any person. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Before serving in the Senate, John McCain was a member of the House of Representatives. And we have a statement from House Speaker Paul Ryan on the passing of Senator McCain. This is a sad day for the United States. Our country has lost a decorated war hero and statesman. John McCain was a giant of our time, not just for the things he achieved, but for who he was and what he fought for all his life. John put principle before politics. He put country before self. He was one of the most courageous men of the century. He will always be listed among freedom's most gallant and faithful servants. Our hearts are with his family, with his wife Cindy, his children, and his grandchildren. This Congress, this country, mourn with him. Let's go to John, who's calling from Worcester, Massachusetts, on the independent line. John, good morning.
Good morning, C-SPAN, for all the good work that you do on the recognition of John McCain's passing. I want to call the attention of every active duty military personnel and military veteran, as well as their families, to a meeting that John held in 1983 with a gentleman who was also a fellow Vietnam veteran, Edwin H. Crosby III, who was calling to John's attention, as well as Joe Biden, who was also a senator at that time, about the spin codes associated with the DD-214 discharge papers. A terrible tragedy has been caused to military veterans who were active at that time, and it needs to be looked at. So as we reflect on the passing of John McCain, we should call into account every present congressional representative and senator to look into the status of the travesty that was caused to military veterans on the spin codes associated with their DD-214s that have prevented them from having the employment at the level that they should, their insurance premium, as well as stolen dollars in the trillions. So that's what we need to remember because John McCain backed out on the promises that he made to Edwin H. Crosby III and all other fellow veterans to look into the matter of funds being and benefits being held from those who also served this country.
Let's go to Sherry, who's calling from West Hartford, Connecticut, on the Republican line. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning. How are you guys doing this morning?
Just fine. What do you have to say?
I have to just comment specifically on just the negative comments that my fellow Americans have just called in. I mean, John McCain has passed on, and there's no way possible for him to singularly, alone, do any significant damage to his country whatsoever. He was a patriot. He was a POW. I just am appalled by the amount of disrespect that has been shown. It's awful. My heart goes out to his wife, Cindy. My heart goes out to his daughter, Megan, and the rest of his family, and all of anyone that he's touched. And he's certainly impacted this world in such a positive way. And to only sit back and, claim that he's singularly responsible for a bill that didn't pass, or that he didn't keep his promises, and all of these negative comments is just so appalling. And I just really appeal to all callers and all Americans to have some dignity and respect for themselves, and have the respect that they need to have and show for this American hero. He was an American hero in every single way. And I just wanted to say that he's just an American hero. Thank you very much.
Now, Sherry, do you think that there were people out there who disagreed with things that John McCain said and did? Do you think there should be a grace period before they renew their criticism of John McCain?
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely, and we're not going to always agree on things, and that's what makes our country what it is, and that's what gives us our freedom. But absolutely, there should definitely be a grace period. I am just, my heart is broken, and it hasn't been 24 hours that he passed away, that I'm hearing these things, and I just had to call. I'm a first-time caller. I watch you guys all the time, and I'm a first-time caller, and I had to pick up the phone. And I even called on the Republican line, and I'm independent. That's how passionate.
So, Sherry, how long do you think people should wait? Should they wait until after the funeral? Should they wait 2 or 3 days before they renew criticism of Senator McCain?
I can't. I don't know the appropriate time, but it certainly right now does not feel like the right time. It really doesn't. It just feels so heart-wrenching, and so it just feels wrong on every level. And maybe a week, maybe maybe a month. I don't know, but it just right now feels so. It feels hard, and it just really feels un-American.
Let's go to Andy, who's calling in on the Democratic line from New York. Andy, good morning. Andy, are you there? Andy from New York, are you on the air? Are you there, Andy? Well, let's go to Athenia, who's calling from Torrance, California, on the independent line. Athenia, good morning. Andy, are you there? Can you hear me?
Can I say something?
Andy, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Andy. Go ahead. I can hear you, Andy. Go ahead. Let's go to Stephen, who's calling from Gainesville, Florida, on the Democratic line. Stephen, good morning.
McCain in 2012 at the Grand Canyon, and he was coming out of the men's bathroom at the lodge. And when he opened the door, there stands John McCain, his infectious smile, was overwhelming. All I could say was thank you for your service in Vietnam. He's a true American hero. Thank you for your time. God bless.
Tributes are still coming in for John McCain from people from all parties. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi tweeted this statement out about John McCain this morning. Senator John McCain was a leader and public servant of deep patriotism, outstanding bravery, and undaunted spirit. Throughout his career, we all saw his integrity, humility, courage, and grace. May it be a comfort to his family to know that so many around the world mourn with them. Let's go to Ed, who's calling from Winchester, Virginia, on the independent line. Ed, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. My first comment is it didn't take long for Donald Trump's swamp people to come out and start criticizing a great American, John McCain. I'm a fellow Vietnam veteran. I served in Vietnam. I fully respect John McCain. He's a man whose moral compass has never wavered from due north. I think the fact that Donald Trump disparaged that man and said he's not an American hero, he likes men that don't get caught. Obviously, he was referring to people like his buddies that are being strewn all over the place, all the president's men that didn't get caught. That's who Donald Trump respects. I hope his daughter Megan picks up his mantle and runs for his Senate seat. I think it's interesting that the two people that he asked to serve and deliver his eulogy are the two gentlemen that he opposed in two presidential campaigns, Barack Obama and George Bush. All of my respect go out to John McCain and my deepest sympathies to his family. We have lost a true American hero today. God bless you, John McCain. You will always be in my mind and in my heart. Thank you.
Let's go to Rhonda, who's calling from Freehold, New Jersey, on the Democratic line. Rhonda, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to all my fellow Americans. I am so heartbroken over this man's death. I have never loved a man like John McCain, and he will go down in our history books of being one of the most greatest American patriots that our country has ever witnessed. And we are so blessed to have had him serve for decades in our Senate to represent our war heroes and our true patriotism. And, you know, it breaks my heart to see people criticize such a great man. You know, but I blame that on the man who doesn't have half the integrity of McCain sitting in the White House, who would sit here and divide us in this matter. Guys, we need to repent. We need to come together and love one another, because if he has taught us one thing that Jesus taught us, is to be long-suffering. And this was the long-sufferingest man I've ever witnessed in the history of our country. And I want to say, give my condolences to his wife, to his daughter Megan, which is a great idea for her to run for his Senate seat. What a way to honor him, and that a monument or something in this country be named after Senator John McCain. God bless all of us and all those Americans out there. Bye-bye.
Let's go to Carl, who's calling from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, on the Republican line. Carl, good morning.
Good morning, sir. I'm a Marine that served during Vietnam, and I was not going to call in today, but I listened to that guy that claimed to be a Marine that said John McCain should be made to pay for his airplane. This guy's not a Marine. He's a fake. He's a phony. And I said to his face, he's a phony. And I think John McCain is a man among men. He served with distinction. And I would just like to say, the guy that called in claimed to be a Marine, He made my blood boil. I thank you, sir.
Let's go to Ethel, who's calling from Somerville, Massachusetts, on the independent line. Ethel, good morning.
Good morning. I am sitting here listening to all these lovely accolades for Senator McCain, and I was wondering, why is it all this hatred for weeks and months about poor President Trump, and when somebody dies, he's a hero? You're driving Mr. Trump to the grave, hurting his family like you are. It's terrible. What kind of hypocrites are we all? That when somebody dies, everybody's... My father chased Pancho Villa in World War I. He was in France all through the war in the Army of Occupation. He come home and drank himself to death. And most of the other young fellows from World War I drank themselves to death. Now, all this talk about accolades and everything, yes, we're all trying to survive, but why are they doing that to Mr. Trump? They're trying to they're going to kill him, and then, they'll have a funeral for him, and there'll be flowers all over the place, and he'll be a hero. What's the matter with America?
Well, last October, Senator John McCain was awarded the Liberty Medal for his lifetime of sacrifice and service. Here's some of what Senator McCain had to say at that ceremony.
We live in a land made of ideals, not blood and soil. We are the custodians of those ideals at home and their champion abroad. We've done great good in the world. That leadership has had its costs, but we have become incomparably powerful and wealthy as we did. We have a moral obligation to continue in our just cause, and we would bring more than shame on ourselves if we don't. We will not thrive in a world where our leadership and ideals are absent. We wouldn't deserve to. I'm the luckiest guy on earth. I have served America's cause, the cause of our security and the security of our friends, the cause of freedom and equal justice, all my adult life. I haven't always served it well. I haven't even always appreciated what I was serving. But among the few compensations of old age is the acuity of hindsight. I see now that I was part of something important that drew me along in its wake, even when I was diverted by other interests. I was, knowingly or not, along for the ride as America made the future better than the past. And I've enjoyed it, every single day of it, the good ones and the not so good ones. I've been inspired by the service of better patriots than me. I've seen Americans make sacrifices for our country and our causes, and for people who were strangers to them, but for our common humanity. Sacrifices that were much harder than the service ever asked of me. And I've seen the good they've done, the lives they've freed from tyranny and injustice, the hope they encouraged, the dreams they made achievable. May God bless them. May God bless America, and give us the strength and wisdom, the generosity and compassion to do our duty for this wondrous land and for the world that counts on us. With all its suffering and danger, the world still looks to the example and leadership of America to become another better place. What greater cause could anyone ever serve?
Senator John McCain is being honored around the world for his lifetime of service. British Prime Minister Theresa May recently tweeted this about Senator McCain. John McCain was a great statesman who embodied the idea of service over self. It was an honor to call him a friend of the UK. My deepest sympathies go to his family and the American people. Let's go to Robert, who's calling from Howardsville, Virginia, on the Democratic line. Robert, good morning.
How are you?
Good morning, Robert. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I'm an Afro-American, and I was a military veteran. But Senator John McCain was a giant. He's the type of person that you can believe in, trust, and he showed the honor as a military veteran. Even though his father had a high ranking, his grandfather had a high ranking, John McCain did not let that release him. He was a proven veteran. And I want Cindy, his daughter, to take that pen that Senator John McCain always carried around in his left hand, and in the future I'm looking for her to sign off on stuff in Arizona as the Senator of Arizona. God bless the family, and God bless Senator John McCain for his service.
Let's go to Evan, who's calling from Montgomery, Alabama on the Democratic line. Evan, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I want to say I battled with lung cancer stage 3 in the past 2 years. And when John McCain walked on that floor to make that vote that day without scrapping the Obamacare Affordable Care Act was a day that saved my life, saved many people's lives who were under the medical part of this Affordable Care Act. One thing I can say, I'm a Democratic. I'm an African-American female. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. In my Martin Luther King voice, my Rosa Parks voice, in my state of Montgomery, Alabama, who did not extend Medicaid, when John McCain walked on that floor that day and made that vote, he said volumes to many people that he was a person who looked at the cause and had the power to vote, and he used it. God bless him. God keep him. And I hope I'm praying for his family and his loss. As an African-American female from the state of Montgomery, Alabama, God bless you, John McCain. God bless you. God bless you. Because you did something as a war hero, as a Republican, and as a vote that we should get out and vote. We should get out and vote.
Let's go to Marlene, who's calling from West Palm Beach, Florida, on the Democratic line. Good morning, Marlene.
Yes, good morning. I'm calling on that line, but I'm a registered Democrat. But I just want to say to the American people this morning, this is a morning when it shouldn't be Republican, Democrat, or independent. It should be a morning when we say goodbye to a man, a human being. So I can hear a lot of people calling in and saying this about him and that about him. I just want to say to his family, they have my deepest sympathy. And I know John is at a better place this morning because the angels welcome him home. And I just want to ask Americans this morning, as Jesus asked when they were stoning that woman, he without a sin cast the first stone. So, my fellow Americans, let's put our differences aside. We have lost our integrity. We are not even Americans anymore. Come on. Put all our differences aside this morning and pay respect to a person who has given his life so that we can have our big talk this morning. Have some decency, because this is what this country has come to, where everybody talks like this president in the White House. Come on, be Americans this morning. May God have mercy on our soul. Thank you, sir.
Let's go to Robert, who's calling from Griffin, Georgia, on the Independent line. Robert, good morning.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. First of all, I'd like to say to the family of McCain, I understand their sorrow, but I have something else to say about Mr. McCain, and that is, while I'm an African American myself, I think we need to study history. He was one of the persons that blocked Martin Luther King in Arizona from having a holiday. He fought it to the end. First of all, we should stop jumping on board with everything they say about heroes, okay? First of all, I'm an ex-service person myself. I served in the 82nd Airborne Division. In 1968, I was in Vietnam. All righty? I don't see no heroes coming back here. You know where the heroes are located? In Arlington National Cemeteries, in the cemeteries around the United States, and those that didn't come back here. We need to stop making everybody a hero. Just like me, I wasn't drafted. I enlisted. I went to Vietnam to better my life. It wasn't for no country, okay? Just like the draft dodgers that burnt their cards rather than go to war, that Ronald Reagan pardoned. Those are the ones back here now calling everybody a hero. They're not no heroes. We went over there. We did a job. We didn't even want to go, okay? The RAs went because we tried to make money for our families, and the draftees didn't want to go, and they had to go. We weren't no damn heroes. So stop calling us heroes, okay? And another thing, stop thanking me for my service. I didn't do it for you. I did it to help my family because you wouldn't give black people a job back here in America, okay? And like I said, the draftees did it because they had to do it. And that's all I have to say.
Let's go to Mark, who's calling from Chico, California, on the Democratic line. Good morning, Mark.
Thank you so much for taking my call. As a disabled Vietnam veteran myself, I will call Senator McCain a hero. I say that for what he's done for this country. He's always been a uniter and not a divider like some people. And I feel so bad for his family. I can imagine what it would feel like to lose such a great husband and father. And I just hope that maybe, just maybe, this person that we have in the White House would learn something from Mr. McCain, Senator McCain. He's always, when he expressed to everybody that called us Senator Obama a Muslim and a bad person, he stood up and said no, he's not, and that was the type of person that he was. And I just hope that this person that we have in the White House would get it together and start bringing this country together, or else we need to get rid of him. I hope he possibly does have a heart attack and just...
We have tributes coming in from around the world for Senator John McCain. A tweet from French President Emmanuel Macron just came in, which reads, "John McCain was a true American hero. He devoted his entire life to his country. His voice will be missed. Our respectful thoughts go to his beloved ones." We also have a tweet coming from the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. "Senator John McCain was an American patriot and hero whose sacrifices for his country and lifetime of public service were an inspiration to millions. Canadians join Americans tonight in celebrating his life and mourning his passing." Let's go to Cassandra, who's calling from Fort Washington, Maryland, on the Democratic line. Cassandra, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
Good. God bless America and God bless C-SPAN. I want to give my deepest condolence to John McCain's family. And I want to say, for those who are calling in and saying negative thoughts about him, you should keep your negative comments to yourself. Let Jesus Christ be the judge, not them. And I want to say that thank John McCain for serving our country, and may he rest in heavenly peace. Thank you, C-SPAN.
Let's go to David, who's calling from Beckley, West Virginia, on the independent line. David, good morning.
Yes. John McCain's the third senator to die in office recently. We had two Democrats Teddy Kennedy and Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia. Robert C. Byrd's got a life-size statue in the capital of West Virginia. The Klans member and a guy that said he'd never serve in the military with a black man. And you got John McCain that served 23 years in the military, and he is the hero. We need to get that statue out of the state capitol building and put a statue of John McCain there. He's the true hero. We got Teddy Kennedy that killed that woman, and they praised him, these two people that never served a day in the military, as heroes. And who's the true hero? Obviously, it's John McCain. And it's 23 years of military service. Regardless what you think he did in Congress, praise him for his military service. Thank you, and God bless the McCain family. Bye.
Here are actually two interesting facts. Senator John McCain actually is the 301st senator to die in office, joining senators like Frank Laudenberg and Senator Edward Kennedy. Another interesting fact is that